Alright, so the first thing you need to do when you're going into Scratch is you need to make an account. So you go over here and you'd sign up for an account. Now I've already made an account, so my first thing would be is for you to go ahead and do that. After you've done that, now you're going to go across and you're going to press create. Okay, when you pressing create, it's going to make a new project for you. And already, as soon as you start, it always comes up as the cat being the sprite. So we don't really want our cat being our sprite today. Oh, you know what? Let's leave it as a cat being our sprite. Now, remember, when we're doing Scratch, we've got to make sure that our blocks work together and that we use the right ones in the right place, because if there's even one mistake, then it won't work. If you're giving someone a set of instructions to get to your house and you leave out one of the turns or it's one of the really important instructions, or it doesn't have to be an important instruction, you'll find that that person will get lost. So just like that, that's what will happen if we don't have the exact right coding. So what we're going to do is we're going to try and make our character. Once again, I know we went through this last year, but we're going to start small and then get big. So let's start with our character. Let's make our character move. Now the way we make our character move is we're going to make our character move to the right hand side. Okay, so that's why when we want to do when the right arrow is clicked. So when the right arrow is clicked, we need our character to move like that. Now you remember when we first went through this up in motion, we went through and we talked about not using the move 10 steps, because move 10 steps just moves 10 steps forward, but that's not going to help us when we're moving backwards and up and down. So what we're going to do is we're going to make sure we go down to this X. Now remember we talked about this before. This is the X-axis. If you see here, it says X is minus 61. As I move my character across, you'll see my character on the X line is going across. The Y is not changing at all, but the X seems to be changing a lot. Like that. So X is across and Y is up and down. Okay, so we're going to make sure, oh, wrong one. We're going to make sure we don't set X, so that we change X by 10. So when the right arrow is clicked, I'm going to change X by 10. Now we're going to go ahead and do the same thing for the left hand side. You can do the same blocks again, or you can duplicate it. This time when we press the left arrow to move backwards, instead of going X by 10, you can see it's decreasing down here every single time. So if we do go backwards, we're going to have to go left arrow is X by minus 10. Okay, so your character can move back and forwards. Now just for this video for today, we're going to make our character move up and down. However, we're going to try hopefully at some point to make our character jump, but that's a bit of far way off. So let's do the same things and let's go when we move up. We're going to change the Y by 10, it goes up, and the opposite on the Y line going down would be Y by minus 10. Now, don't really know why these messages are coming up, but that's okay. Okay, so now your character can move up and down. Why can't it move down? Because I didn't press down arrow. That makes sense. It's a really good problem solving activity you do in coding, because when something doesn't work, it's usually your fault. You might think it's annoying the computer doesn't work, but actually it's usually your fault. Okay, so we're going to go back through and we're going to change the background of our character. Let's go through and change it to a beach. Fine. Okay, so your character can move up and down. Up, down. Okay, now remember last year when we did this, at this point we added in a new character. So we're going to go down to sprite and we're going to add in a new character. Now remember last year when we did this, we added in a ball. So we're going to do the same thing for now. You can see my character here is already turning around. That reminds me of one other thing we used to do last year, which was we have to make sure that our character over here in direction is going to go back and forth. And we're also going to make sure we do one thing, which is that if our character hits the edge of the wall, they're going to bounce off. Sorry, I'm a bit behind. I haven't done coding for a couple of months, so bear with me as I draw. Okay, really, and a good other thing here we're seeing is your character actually when it walks backwards isn't turning around the opposite way. So that means that we're going to make sure that when you're doing left and right, you can see here it says point in the direction. If we're going right, we're happy from a point this way, but if we're going left, we want it to be pointing he points that way. So now when he walks back and walks forward. Okay, now remember, as if I'm going too quick, you can always pause it and stop it and go step by step as we're going. But you should have a character now who points, goes forward and backwards. Now I've got a ball here, and the ball so far has no coding. And remember, the ball is going to be a character that you're going to try to avoid. So you're going to make your character not be controlled by the keyboard. Your character can be controlled by itself. So that's why we do, when the game starts, when the flag is clicked, your character is going to move 10 steps. Now you'll see why this is a problem, because it just moves 10 steps and then stops. So what do? Do you remember what we did? We made sure that we put in a forever block, because the forever block was going to make sure that whatever you're coding you put into it, make sure it does it forever. But it doesn't come back. Now I can hear some of you through the TV screen, through the computer screen already telling me what I need to do, which is that I need to make it bounce off the wall. But you might be thinking that's a bit too easy so far, so you might think that we need to change up the direction. So we stop the game, and we make our direction go a little bit crazy all over the place, so that when it starts, it's going like this. Now you can see at the moment it's going straight through your character without your character having really any effect by it. Now, I would say to you, before you decide you're going to duplicate your your ball and make lots of little balls, I would suggest you do one of the balls first, and then we can duplicate it once the coding is fully in. Now I would say that's a bit hard, this game, with the ball being that big. I'm going to change it down to about size 40 down here, you can see. And so now when you play it, it looks like that, which is probably a lot easier. Now remember, if you did want to get your game quicker, you could just make it move 20 steps in one go, and it goes like that. Or if you thought it was too hard, you could change it down to 5. Especially if you're going to make multiple balls, you would decide that that's the way we do it. Okay, so I'm hoping that this is pretty much so far just a refresher of what we did last year, and that so far you'll be able to keep up. And I think hopefully you remember last year what we did at this stage, which was we decided to make a health bar for our character. Now in variables doesn't necessarily mean health bar, it just means a button. You're just making a button. So I'm going to make a variable and I'm going to call it health. That doesn't mean that that's what it always has to be with variables, but for today, this is what it's going to be called. Now remember, when I start the game, the health's set to nothing and it's not affected because you just made a button, you haven't actually told the button what to do. So we're going to say now, when this game starts, most games, I would assume, would start with a health of 100. Now you might have it as lives, so you might be going down, like lives, that's fine, but we're going to do it like health. So we're going to do set health when the game starts to 100. Let's test it out. I would suggest you test out all of your things, pretty much each step, so you don't get too far in without things working. So you can see, yep, start the game, health to 100. Now, I'm hoping that some of you had already gotten onto the idea of how you're going to make your character lose points, or lose health, sorry. So we're going to do another thing, which is, let me think now, I'm trying to remember. When your character touches, is that right? Yep. So how do we do this? We're going to do it when it starts, yep. There's got to be a forever block in there, doesn't there? Forever. And there's an if, but that's right, now I remember. Okay, so you're saying if I do touch the ball, yep, that makes sense now. So when the game starts, forever, if I'm touching that ball, I want my character to change the health. Now some of you would think that's the right way to go, but it's not going to be right. So now your character's going up. Why is it going up? Because the character is going up by +1. So we're going to change it like this. Okay, like that. Yep. Now hopefully now you remember that if I duplicate that ball now, there would be the exact same other ball going around. But not both of those balls has the coding to make you lose points. If I hit this ball, look, it just goes, sorry, let's do a better example. that ball is not making me lose points, because you'll see over here, when the ball hits me, when ball 1 hits me, I'm losing points, but not ball 2. So to make that happen, you just duplicate this, and now make it ball 2. So now both of those balls are going to make you lose points. Now, if you remember how, like, the game we did at the end of last year we always wanted to have a carry, your person actually be able to have some concept of winning the game. So we want to make sure that we duplicate the ball one last time, but this time, how do we change color? I'm trying to remember now. Sorry, just stick with me for 1 second. Oh, here we go, costumes. Yep, costumes. We make the character blue, and this time we go back to the coding, and we do the same thing as before when we duplicate it, except this time with ball 3, we're just going to take away that minus sign, so now that's adding points. Okay, so now your character, oh no, I'm losing. I'm struggling a little bit here. You can see my character's not really moving fast enough. I feel like it's kind of lagging. So what I could do over here is I could try just to see if it works. Let's see if it's minus 20 for left and positive 20 for this way. Let's see if it works a bit better. It's a bit jarring the way it moves, but at least it moves a bit quicker. We'll see. Okay, so that's where we might leave this week's video, which is basically just a catch up of what we did last term to try to get us to here, and then we're going to go through and start looking at some more things before we get on to our project for this term, which is to make a scratch game about the gold rush in Australia. But that's a long way off at the moment. We're just trying to make sure we remember the basics of coding and how it works before we move on. So I hope by the end of today's lesson, when you're doing it yourself, you'll be able to make sure that you have a character, the sprite that can move up and down, left and right, make sure it doesn't hit the walls and turn upside down and doesn't disappear, and that you can make other characters that move around the screen, and that when they hit you, you can lose and gain health. I remember last year we did those games where the ball was dropping from the roof, and as it got to the floor, they regenerated, and that's something we can look at as well. But at the moment, we just want to start here and then gradually get harder. I hope you've learned something from today's lesson, and I look forward to the next lesson. Thank you.